it's hard to describe something that's not logical. At the same time, it's really hard to understand something that you're trying to describe when it's not in the physical. So it's just real hard.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Okay, good. Let's just a few words. Kenzie just disappeared. I wanted to talk to him. Yeah, so today we're going to finish Kant. And if you went into Blackboard, you'll see that I made some changes in the syllabus. All the times where I wrote no class, we're going to have class. So I don't know if you looked at this.
Yeah, it said no class for Wednesday, but
so we will have
right?
class, yes. All of these, I changed it. We're going to have some group work that I need you to do on those days. So anytime I wrote, so please download the right syllabus, the new one. So all of those classes where it says no class, you'll see I have changed it. Okay. So that's the first thing. So when we finish today with Kant, I'm going to give you some guidelines how to write, because in this particular class, I'll be really looking not only at what you say, but how you say it. So I'm going to be working on your writing skills. It's about time somebody take care of this for you. So I'll be looking at that. So I'll give you some precise guidelines. If you follow them, you should be okay. It doesn't guarantee an A to follow the guidelines, because it's a work in progress. You will see that in this class, you will start with a certain level, and hopefully you will progress into a better level of writing. So the guidelines don't guarantee, but gives you a good chance. The rest is your writing, how clear you are, and so forth. But the guidelines should be pretty detailed, so it should help you a lot. And then I'll give you the questions. I'll write them out on Blackboard, and you'll pick. We'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so let's get into the text. Just making sure. I'm just gonna go over. I think most of you are following more or less. Just Safin. See, the two people I want to talk to. This is difficult. Okay. What can I do? All right. Good. All right, so let's get into the last section, which is morality and freedom, which starts on page third section, I guess, page 49. Okay, so in this particular section, it's going to be pretty brief. We're going to also go into the last little bit on the supposed right to lie, just a little bit. We talked about it slightly. I mean, I brought it up, but now I'll really go over it. So first thing we're going to understand today is the distinction in Kant between the phenomenal and the nominal realm. Okay. I'm going to interrupt my lecture now to address Safin. Safin and Mackenzie, I just want to go over a little bit. I'm a little worried, Safin, you're missing quite a few reading assignments. And two, I see two here.
I did today's, and I put in the late section for the last one, because I missed class.
I don't accept late reading assignments. So that's gone. So be careful, Safin, to make sure your reading assignments are on time. And Mackenzie, no, that's the problem. Like, I have nothing from you. So I have nothing from you since the beginning of the semester. Where are you putting it? Yeah.
Is there, you only accepted this under the school email?
No, but let's look over it together after class.
Yeah,
We'll do that. And you show me what you got on your computer, right? You have your computer here?
Yeah, my computer.
Okay, so you can show me what you've done. Because I have like nothing, so I was wondering what was. Okay. All right, back to the lecture. Good. Oh yeah, one more thing. Be careful, latecomers, right? Even if you're 2 minutes late, it counts as an absence, right? Just because it doesn't look professional, basically. And you're interrupting the group and you're barging in, and it looks bad. So be very careful. Remember, you get the point for the group discussion only if you're on time. So make sure you're on time so you're not missing. So Mackenzie, you've been here, but you've been late. So that's also. So that counts as an absence. So be careful, right? But at least we can get your reading assignments in. That'll, yeah. I feel you. I feel your pain. I do. I hated professors like that when I was in college. So I totally can relate with you right now. Believe me. You'll thank me later. Okay. back to our lecture. Yes. So we're going to distinguish today more clearly between the nominal and the phenomenal realm. Everybody knows how to spell this, right? Nominal, N-O-U-M-E-N-A-L. Phenomenal, P-H-E-N-O-M-E-N-A-L. And so remember, we've been talking as though it's a given, right? That there are two realms, and that, you know, one realm has to do with the, you know, concrete reality, and the other realm is the realm of the ought, right? What we ought to do. And we've assumed, up until now, as I've been talking, we've assumed that this realm exists, but it's not obvious, right? Some of us might object and be like, well, no, everything that we do is based on the laws of nature. Even when we help someone, we're helping someone so that maybe they will help us back, or maybe it will help us feel good about our day, right? So it can be argued, and many philosophers have argued this, that we are only in the phenomenal realm, and that our actions, even if we call them moral, still there is an instinctual basis to it. So for example, I'm going to help you with your homework, but that I am implying by that you'll get me something in return somehow, maybe your friendship, or maybe you'll help me with something else. So I'm actually doing everything ultimately for my own benefit. Even I'm helping someone, it's just to feel good, right? Sometimes, even if I don't get immediate benefit. So philosophers have argued that there is no nominal realm. Everything that we do, even the so-called moral actions, has to do with instinct, right? So Kant actually needs to, at this point, argue for this realm, right? And so he's going to do this in a very interesting way, which I find somewhat convincing. He's going to say, we know there is a nominal realm because we are free. And I'm going to explain this, okay? We know there is a nominal realm because we are free. So let me explain what he means by that. So first of all, if we look at the phenomenal realm, the realm of instinct, right? Remember, the phenomenal realm is the realm of what is. It is dictated by instinct. Everything that we do in the phenomenal realm has to do with my own happiness and my own survival. This is me on a phenomenal level. Everybody clear on that terminology? Yes? Okay. So in this realm, however, says Kant, right, even though I am happy, right, I am working towards my happiness, I am never truly free. Why is that? Can anyone tell me that my working for my happiness in the instinctual phenomenal realm, that's great, but I'm never truly free in that realm? Why would he say that? Anyone tell me? I'm happy, but I'm not free.
Because I think his Kant says that there's more to a human than being happy because we were born with freedom.
So yeah, there's more to them. We know that. We know we're moral, but he's talking specifically about freedom, and he's saying if you're only living on the phenomenal level of your life, you're never going to be free. Let's see what Safin comes up with.
Because you have to work very hard.
What do you mean by that?
Otherwise, in life, like, what makes you happy, like stuff, right?
Oh, in that sense. You have to work for morality too, right? Because you gotta do sacrificial actions that you don't like. So that's, you know, you gotta stay in a marriage. You hate your spouse, but here you are. That's hard work, right? To stay. So, so it's hard work too. So it's not that. Yeah, Nasir.
I'm not sure, but I think he said that because we're tied to the obligations or something. So we're not free because we can't fulfill ourselves to the minimum.
So wait, you mentioned obligations. Say a little louder the rest.
He says that in the book, I'm not sure, and I don't understand what he's saying, but he says something about how we feel like tied down by like obligations in the phenomenal realm.
So careful, obligations, isn't that in the moral realm that I have the duty to? Does he talk about obligations in the phenomenal realm? I'm curious.
I think so.
Okay, so what are these obligations that we are tied down by?
Maybe to like make a living or.
Oh, in that sense. So that's kind of what Safin was saying, is hard work to, you know, get our happiness. But it's like, why is this, there's obligations in the nominal realm too, right? I have to, you know, do this moral action. I'm bound by duty to do this, right? So there's obligations in both. Children, tell me.
Rule by desires.
Sorry, again?
Rule by desires.
Yes, very good. Okay, yes, you're the closest one. Very good. In the phenomenal realm, everything that we do is because there is a consequence attached to it. So we're always guided by the result, right? So I'm going to be nice to you because I know you're going to be nice back, or I'm going to work for this job because I know I'm going to get money, or I'm going to, I don't know, eat healthy so I can be, you know, happier, right? But so everything that we're doing because there is a certain result. And so our actions are dependent on a result. And this he calls, this is what Kant calls heteronomous actions. Heteronomous, H-E-T-E-R-O, like heterosexual, but nomos, N-O-M-O-U-S. Nomos from the Greek nomos, law, right? Commanded from the outside. That's what heteronomous actually literally means in Greek, commanded from the outside. So my actions in the phenomenal realm are continuously commanded from the outside. I do something because the outside result is in a way giving me the incentive to do this particular action. Does that make sense? Yes.
You talked about like external causes a lot,
That's
and
it.
like happiness related to instinct, and how you can't really have that from a posteriori knowledge. It would have to be a priori. So that's kind of like the nominal as opposed to the phenomenal thing.
So yeah, so we're getting there, right? Absolutely, you're on the right. You're exactly on the right path, right? So first of all, we're clear, right? Hopefully, that when we're thinking of our happiness, the law of our actions is outside of ourselves. We are wanting to be, like you said, wealthy, rich, happy. I want to get money. I want to get a spouse. I want to get a pet. I want to get a child. I want to get a house. I want to get it. Everything that we're doing is for that thing. So we are constantly doing things based on the results, and so our actions are commanded by a result outside of me. Are we all clear how those actions are not really free, right? If you're going to say, okay, I want to be happy. So your instinct is calculated, right? I want to be happy. To be happy, I have to be healthy. Therefore, I have to eat a certain way. All right, so I'm going to do that in order to be happy. You're dictated by the result of the health that you're going to get. Is telling you how you should act. It's not really coming from you. It's coming from whatever you want to get in the world, right? That's the idea. The example was very bad because it's a kind of more internal example. Like, for example, you want to have a nice house, right? And so you're going to work towards it. You're going to get a career, make money. All your actions are dictated by this nice house, which is out there, which is kind of calling to you. And so your actions are dictated by something in reality. It's outside of you that the action is the law of your action is outside of you. So Kant says, okay, well, we are mostly like this, right? Most of our actions are guided by the consequences, right? What's in it for me? But then he notices, and in this way, I mean, for me, who studied Levinas, I'm seeing so many parallels between Kant and Levinas. And when we do Levinas, you're going to see also, at one point he notices there are moments where we don't act according to the result, where we act no matter what is the result. So he's just noticing, right? He's not saying we should. He's noticing that there are moments in our lives where at times we will do this crazy thing, which goes against every logic, right? Goes against every, people will be like, why are you doing this? That's crazy, right? You don't have a result out there, and yet you're doing it. Anybody can give me an example of such a crazy action where you're doing it and it's like there is no result attached to it. In fact, the result sucks. So it's clearly not that is your incentive, right? Anybody can give me an example of such an action? Yes, Stephanie.
Toxic relationship.
No, this is not good. It's not what I'm looking for. But I mean, I want to stop on that because let's look at that, because their category for right for toxic relationships. Toxic relationships, Kant would say, is simply your instinct not calculating correctly what is good for you. So you're looking at this person, they're toxic, but you still feel your happiness lies in them, and you feel like if I cut them off, I will be unhappy. So your instinct is still functioning, but is not smart enough to figure out what will really make you happy, right? So that's dysfunctional instinct. It's not yet what I'm looking for.
Is it the same thing as like impulsive decisions?
It's different, right? Impulsive, I wonder if there's a category. You guys really make me think. Is there a category for impulsive actions? Not for Kant. He's German, for God's sake. There's no impulsive actions in Germany. Have you been to Germany?
No.
Okay. So So no, that doesn't even exist, that category. Yes.
I think you would say that impulsive actions are like just fall under instinct. And if you really were using your reason, then you wouldn't even do the impulsive action. It wouldn't even be like a thing in your brain for it to at any point occur. And
Careful, because instinct is smart. Instinct is figuring out all the time what makes me happy.
yeah, and I still think that you would say that like when you follow, like when you are, I just forgot the word, impulsive, like it's really just, okay, I'm not finishing this off, but yeah.
I mean, yeah, I have a hard time because impulsive is not calculating correctly.
Yeah.
It's not taking the time to calculate what is. Remember, instinct is not how we see instinct. We see instinct like, oh, I just did it. I don't know why, right? Kant has a very specific definition of instinct, which is a mental calculation as to what will make me happy. It's happening in your brain, right? Everything for Kant. There's only a brain for Kant, right? So it's real refined calculation what will make me happy. So I don't even know if he has some room in his philosophy for impulse, right?
Maybe lack of knowledge.
Hmm?
Maybe lack of knowledge. Would he say that like if somebody acts impulsively, it's only because they're missing a certain like knowledge that if they had that, they would never have acted that way?
Yeah, I mean, instinct, which is thinking, right? Sometimes, yeah, I don't even know if instinct would make such a decision because there's no clear cut. It's not clear that it will bring happiness. You're just like, whatever, I'll just do it, right? So I really honestly don't think he has a category for that in his philosophy, just because his personality, he cannot even fathom that that somebody would do that.
Right.
Right?
I think impulsive decisions, usually we think they're going to bring us happiness, but we just didn't think it through to know if it actually will.
So
or not.
limited instinct. Maybe we can say then, okay, so that would work. So it's a limited instinct. It's kind of, baby instinct, not yet very sophisticated instinct, right? Good. Yes.
How about like volunteering?
Okay, so give me how that would be rational and not dependent on anything outside of yourself.
Like for example, like how for example, like ASPCA, they help animals, which I don't think they'll get anything out of it. So.
Oh, yeah, right. That's good. Yeah, you're helping animals. What are they gonna do, right? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's a good point. I like that one, right? But then you have to distinguish from volunteering for the fun of it. That would still be instinct, right? Volunteering because it brings you pleasure. That's instinct. Volunteering because it gets you out of the house. But volunteering just for the sake of, you care for those animals, and the ideal would be that for you to volunteer for animals like snakes or spiders, animals that really are not cute and bring you no pleasure whatsoever. Dysfunctional animals, maybe dogs with rabies. You know what I mean? The less pleasurable, the more moral, right? So this is the idea, right? There are some actions that we do where there's nothing in it for us, and yet we do them, right? For staying in a marriage that, you're like, I'm not, I know I need to stay there, but I'm not happy. This is one action where it's absurd. Everyone is like, what the hell? Or an action like, go ahead, you have an idea?
In the case of volunteering for a dysfunctional animal, wouldn't it still benefit you in the resume for your experience?
Unless your resume has nothing to do with animals, then really it's a waste of time. Anytime someone is telling you you're wasting your time, boom, you're in the realm of morality, right? In a way, right? I mean, of course, not any action, right? Because you could be wasting your time in a toxic relationship too, right? But absolutely, an action where there's nothing in it for you, and yet here you are, and Kant is noticing, wow, there's some moments we actually break out of the phenomenal and we do something crazy, right? And that, he says, proves that there's something else dictating our actions. Do you follow the argument? Right? Let me just say one more time, and then I'll get your point, right? So the fact that we can sometimes break out of the phenomenal and act out of a different law, it seems, right? Follow a different law, a different imperative, like the imperative to take care of maybe animals who are in a shelter, whatever, is nothing for you. Kant is saying at that moment you show that there's a different law on your life, that there's a different calling. And therefore we know that there must be, according to Kant, a different realm, which of course we cannot know anything about and we cannot prove. We can only infer. You see that it's not a proof, right? We don't, a proof would be here, I draw it on the board for you and you can see it, or I can demonstrate it. Kant is saying we can never be sure of the nominal, because the nominal by essence is mysterious. It's not visible. It's not part of the phenomenal that we can see, touch, analyze, and know, right? It's not part of anything we can know, but we can infer, we can get a glimpse of it through these moments where we break out of the phenomenal. Everybody follow this idea? Okay, go ahead, Goldstein.
So I understand his premises and his conclusion, but I can't really think of an example where it actually would be no benefit, because even in the animal example, I'm wondering if I don't think anybody really does anything that really has no benefit for them. So maybe it's the resume, maybe it's that they feel pain when they see other when they see animals in pain, or that they want to help out, and that it makes them feel good. So that is kind of just like another thing that's for themselves almost.
Yes, that's good. Here's an example. Maybe we'll escape your criticism.
Sorry.
You guys remember a few years back in New York City, someone got thrown on the tracks, as they do every month nowadays. And it was a little girl, I think, who got thrown on the tracks, and a train was coming, and I think this guy, I don't even know if he was homeless, some guy jumped after her to protect her. Absolutely zero benefit for him. He was gonna die, right? And do you know this story? Have you heard? Tell me the details. Nobody heard of this?
It wasn't a homeless guy. It was a regular.
It was a regular guy. The train stopped?
No, it was stopping, but it looked like the train wasn't gonna stop at the right time.
Oh, got
but
it.
The guy still went and stopped.
Did he survive?
Yeah.
Okay. So this crazy action, right? Where, any action where you lay your life down for someone and it has really clearly zero benefits because you're gonna die. That's the kind of action he's talking about, right? This is the action of the people in the concentration camps who would take their bread and give it to someone else, right? Like, I will die if I do this, but I'm doing it because I don't know, there's something telling me to do it. That thing telling you to do it is the nominal, right? And we'll see the same example in Medina. Is this kind of helping a little bit?
A little bit.
You're really a tough client for Kant. Yes, Sebastian.
I kind of agree with that statement. Like the example you gave of the guy coming from the train, like you can always make an argument that someone's gaining something. Let's say he gets like this rush that he loves to. He just keeps on looking for a rush.
That's just so unfair.
Or he's like suicidal and he wants to like go out with like his hero.
That's
He wants to kill himself. You know?
Okay, so then how about the
I think there's
example?
always some like motive that you can think
Fine, fair enough. But how about the example where you're which is a real life example, the people in the camps who would give their own bread to the elderly or to the children, right? Sacrificing potentially their own survival. Right? How does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's.
Are you seeing it's a better example? Maybe it's like
I'm so sorry.
we know that New Yorkers are so crazy; they will do anything anyways. But yes, and then maybe Avila first, and then go side. Go ahead.
What if they're religious and they believe that giving their things to other people, it would lead them to God?
Okay, so then that's instinct, right? The fact that, okay, if I die for this person, I will go to heaven, right? So, but Kant is saying even religion, to a certain degree, many tenets of religion are based on the moral law, not the opposite for Kant, right? So even though it has religious argument and there's some idea of heaven floating around, still the idea of sacrificing yourself for another with no immediate reward is something which for Kant is coming from deeper than religion, is coming from this moral law which is within us. So religion, when it talks about sacrifice or laying down your life for others, in the words of Jesus, for example, Jesus is simply referring to the moral law that's inside all of us, right? He's not inventing anything according to Kant. So depends, right? If you're doing it like a suicide bomber, for example, that you're going to go to heaven, that's instinct, right? But if you're doing it because that's what God told you to do and you feel is the right thing to do, obscurely you're following the moral law, even though it's all messed up in your head because you're God. Right? So you're still obscurely following the moral law. Does that make sense?
But wouldn't that still be gaining?
Yeah, if you're in it to get, there's two types. There's a religious person that will do it to gain heaven. That's instinct. But some religious people will just do it because God said so. And they don't even know, it would have to be a religious person who doesn't believe in heaven or hell. Then it would work, right? And some religious people don't, right? So they just do it because the right thing to do. Because I think Judaism, for example, it doesn't believe in heaven or hell. So when they do it, something's God said so, period. At that moment, because you're following this authority, yeah, you call it God, but because it's an authority, so in a way, it's still, Kant would not like it so much because it's outside of you. But actually, if you dig a little, that commandment is also within you. That's why you're really doing it, according to Kant. Does that help a little better? So yeah, without heaven or hell, if you're doing it for God, you're in the moral spectrum. Otherwise, if you're following for heaven or hell or for God's blessing, you're all over here with instinct, right? Okay, go inside.
If at the risk of sounding like a really terrible person, if I'm in a, God forbid, in a concentration camp and I'm trying to survive, any day that I feel slightly more strength or slightly less hungry, I'm going to share my bread with everyone around me, and I'm going to be really friendly, because then it's very likely that if I'm struggling, they're going to help me back.
Then you're with instinct.
Right.
Yeah. So this would have to be someone who, so in the context of the camp, the decision is difficult because the calories are very, very low, right? It's not like, oh, I feel good. There's no days where you feel strong, right? Where like you're saying, oh, I'm energetic today. It's a good day.
No, just slightly less like I'm going to die within the next 30 seconds. Maybe like I have, 2 hours.
Okay, yeah. So in that sense, yeah. So he would say, yeah, if you're doing it with the intention of creating community and people will help each other, you're still over here with instinct, which is survival of the group, which is not bad, right? It's just not moral. Yeah. Moral would be you do it and there's no reward. Any reward.
How could there ever be such an action? That seems very metaphysical. Like, how could that be?
I think the pure action is dying for someone. That's the pure moral action. And then everything else is a degree lower, right? The pure action is really dying for someone, and you do zero benefits to anybody, right? Kent?
Yeah, I was going to talk about something that might be a degree, or try to give an example. What if you're married to someone, right? And they're in a coma, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a bad one, yes.
And in that case, obviously, they're in a coma, they're in the hospital, you have to pay the medical bills. So it's not like they're just sitting there. Clearly, them being there is sapping some of your resources away. And that sounds some type of way, but it's true, right? They're sapping your resources away. And you still maintain to be married to them and still maintain, to pay for their medical. That degree, I know it's not perfect.
Yeah, and I hear Goldstein over here in my brain saying, yeah, but you're trying to get them back. Right?
Yeah.
So I was thinking that originally, and then I guess I can kind of build on your example something that might make sense to me. If you're married to someone who gets brain damage, and that's like irreversible.
That's the worst. Okay, yeah, that would another pure morality. And there's people like that who stayed in a marriage where the person is not the same anymore, where they become violent, and they're still there out of this kind of sense of higher, whatever duty to themselves, right? And yes, that would be also very pure moral action. Most of our actions are tainted, right? Even the volunteering, like I kind of get a kick, like during COVID I volunteered. Haha, it was just to get out of the house. It was like zero moral, incentive for that. I was pure instinct, right? So most of our actions are mixed, but like you're saying, very good. There are actions which we can see very clearly. And Kant is observing, wow, these actions, there is really nothing in the phenomenal realm that is dictating this, therefore must come from somewhere else. Therefore, the possibility exists that there is a higher law, another kingdom that is dictating this from within us, right? And that's the Nominal realm. Are we a little clearer, hopefully? Okay, yes.
I know this is not your lesson, but I just wanted to point out that I don't think there's ever, with volunteering, I don't think that it is 100% instinct, because there's plenty of people that were bored and just watched another TV show or bake another cake or something else.
There's only so much Netflix you can watch.
Still,
I think
a lot
for
of
me
people
it was
didn't volunteer,
no,
didn't help other people. So.
Everything is always mixed, right? I mean, sometimes it's pure instinct. In my case, I really believe it was pure instinct, but it's a really, really bad instinctual case of volunteering. But yeah, many people, it's mixed. Most of us were in the mixed, right? Absolutely. So now that we have this, we can see that maybe this helps clarify a little bit, to go back to the Nazis knocking on your door, right? If you're going to say, yes, come in because you're thinking of the consequences, your action, is it free or not free? it's not free because you're thinking your action is in a way dictated by whatever consequences you're feeling. So because it's not free, therefore says this is not the moral plane. You are on the instinctual plane there, which doesn't mean it's bad. Instinct is good for survival. I mean, anytime you're fighting for someone's life, this is instinct, right? Which isn't bad, it's fine, but it's not the same thing. So, however, when you say, you know, I'm going to say the truth because it's the right thing to do, not tied to the consequences. It's an extreme example. It's a very uncomfortable example, but it makes very clear, I think, what he's trying to say, that at that moment you're acting because it's the right thing to do, not because of any consequences. You can flip the example, make it much easier. The decision to hide some people in your house is going against, you're putting your family in danger, you're putting yourself in danger, you're putting your community in danger, and that's here you are doing it, right? Because there's this internal law telling you to do it. At that moment, you're acting freely by choosing to have them in your house in the first place, right? If, however, you're thinking, I better not do this because I might put my family in danger, you're on instinct, right? So the example, you can see it both ways. As so are we a little more clear now on Kant? Now let's go to a couple quotes just to go over what we just said today. So you have some quotes. Go to page 53. Go to the last paragraph. Okay, we're just going to go over what I just said, those quotes. Therefore, a rational being, who is with me?
54.
53, last paragraph. Therefore, a rational being. Okay, good. All right, therefore, a rational being must regard himself qua intelligence as belonging, and this is important, not to the world of sense, but to the world of understanding. So he's distinguishing two worlds, right? And it's sad that he uses understanding because he's making us even more confused, but this is the nominal. Therefore, he has two standpoints from which he can regard himself and know laws of the use of his powers and hence of all of his actions. First, insofar as he belongs to the world of sense, this is the phenomenal world of sense. Subject to laws of nature, right? Laws of instinct, heteronomy, right? Everything that you're doing is dictated from the outside. Secondly, insofar as he belongs to the intelligible world, this is the noumenal, world subject to laws, which independent of nature, right? This is a law coming from within. It's not dependent on consequences. They're not empirical, but are founded on reason. And these are autonomous actions, right? Just to get the terminology, heteronomy versus autonomy. Right, so that's the first quote. Then we can look at 55. Go to the 1 to 3rd paragraph, right in the middle of the third. Oh no, it's not right in. Okay, I'm going to count from the top of the 3rd paragraph. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 from the top of the 3rd paragraph on page 55, he thereby, are you there? Okay. He thereby proves that by having a free will or a will free of sensuous impulses, he transfers himself in thought into an order of things entirely different from that of his desires in the field of sensibility. That's what Schoeden was saying, right? It's an action free of desires, free of whatever incentives. And this is when I am most truly free, is when I am moral. So this is actually quite, I don't know, Kant, the conclusions you can draw from Kant are quite spectacular. This idea that morality, that you are only truly moral when you're truly free, or that you're only truly free when you're truly moral, is very interesting. We're going to come back to this idea that you cannot be free unless you're moral. This is a very, very interesting idea. But first, let me have one more. Actually, I think I'm good with those 2 quotes. Yeah, I think just going to what I just said, to be moral is to be free is to be moral. Page 49, he says that actually. Last sentence of the 2nd paragraph on 49. Thus, a free will and a will subject to moral laws are one and the same. It sounds like a paradox, right? The fact that I'm free and yet moral. And we're going to talk about that right now, actually. So I'm deducing 3 interesting, how should I put it? There are 3, not consequences, but I can't think of the word. This is horrible. Yeah, the world is completely gone. There's three things we can deduce from what I've just said. That's from what we've learned from Kant, which are really interesting implications. That's the word I was looking for. There are three implications that I want to stop on because they're quite spectacular and they really highlight the genius of Kant, right? The first one is obvious, right? Actually, no, I'm just going to look at one, actually, because forget about the three, just one. I'm just going to look at one. Which is the notion that to be free is to be moral. And I want to stop on that because it's a very interesting idea, because it's countercultural, right? Countercultural in terms of Western philosophy. In Western philosophy, there has been the idea that freedom, or in general in our culture, we think to be free is to do what I want, to be free is to get what I want. I think you were talking about that a little bit in your reading assignment, right? So in other words, I'm free when I can do whatever I want to do, and usually freedom is seen with happiness, right? To be free is to get everything I want so I can be happy, right? So we have a tradition in our minds as a culture, we put freedom on the level of instinct. When I can do what I want, that's when I'm free, right? Kant is doing something very peculiar. He's saying, no, you're not truly free. True freedom has to do when you are obeying this higher law, which is your law, right, of your higher self. So I found this very, very interesting. He talks actually in a short section in the text on love, and he talks about love that is practical, love that is pathological. And he makes the same argument that the love that is just following the emotions and doing what it wants and just following its feelings is not truly free, right? So you fall in love with someone. So I always give the example in class of you're married, 50 years, and you fall in love with your soulmate. Turns out your wife or husband was never really truly, there was not a good fit. And you meet someone and they happen to be your soulmate. And you realize, like, this is the person I love. I have to be with them. And now you're in conflict between instinct and reason. Instinct is like, go for it. Let's go meet the soulmate. Reason is like, no, you will stay in this marriage, right? And so I ask students when we teach this class with, I call them the babies, when I teach this class to the freshmen, right? I ask them, which love do you think is free? So I think, Stefan, you remember, I think you were in that. No, were you in that class, the class on love? Do you remember what people usually answer when I ask them, which love is free? The one that goes with the soulmate or the one that stays with the wife or the husband?
The one that goes.
Exactly. Most kids will answer, right? The one that, yeah, you're free. You can go. You don't have to be in the shackles of marriage. You can go be with this person. And actually, what would Kant say? What is the true free love here? Exactly. I forgot. There's only one alternative left.
Oh, that's
Mackenzie, help him out. I see it.
marriage.
Yes, why? No, why?
Because that's the one you're in initially. And marriage still has some bonds there.
Bonds, but that doesn't sound very free. What is free about staying there? That's the question. How is that free, though? Develop.
Because isn't it the whole point that being free is to be moral, and that's being morally correct? So staying in a marriage is morally correct, so that's how you're free.
So that's true, but there's a deeper reason why being free is being moral. That's what I'm trying to get to. Why is it that staying in the marriage, which doesn't feel free at all, why is it that is the free action? And I mentioned in passing the terminology you need for this. Who can help me to know? So we know he says that, but why? Why is it that staying in the shackles of marriage? Why is that? Why am I free at that moment? The freest at that moment? Yes.
Is it because we're not tethered to the phenomenal realm?
Yes. You're acting purely out of what you truly, what you're following you, your integrity, your higher self. You're not following whatever temptation or desire or, whatever, what do you call it? Whatever sweetness life seems to be promising you through this soulmate relationship, right? Your action is not dependent on this reward. Your action is coming from a deep sense of what you truly know to be right, on what your higher self is telling you. So instead of doing what the world is telling you to do, what this incentive is telling you to do, you are doing what your higher self is telling you to do. At that moment, you're not dependent on anything outside of yourself. You are fully autonomous and self-possessed. Yes, Mackenzie.
I just find that really interesting because to me it's kind of like, in my mind, because I'm a religious person, right? It seems like he's comparing that to be considered like the devil. Like the devil tempts you sometimes, it's something that seems sweet and seems okay. And it seems like that's kind of what he's characterizing as the world, like you're in this right marriage, because as we said, we're doing something that's like a phenomenal road to staying in the marriage. However, the devil or the world in this case is giving you somebody that's supposed to be better. And
here's where it gets worse. That person is better. Then it gets really hard. What if that person is your soulmate and they would make your life better? It's not even an illusion. It would be better. And yet you're like, I'm not going to follow something outside of myself. I'm going to follow my own voice, my higher voice, obviously, right? The voice of my integrity says I should stay. And so my action now is entirely dependent on me. That's the idea. It's not a heteronomous action dependent on whatever is out there, like what do you call it when you have the carrot and the donkey? What's that called? The carrot?
Bait.
The bait, yes. You're not making a decision based on bait, right? You're making a decision based on your higher self. At that moment, you're fully autonomous, and that's why you're free. Does that make sense? Your action is not heteronomous. It's not dictated by something outside of yourself. It's dictated by you. You are completely self-mastered and self-possessed. You dictate. And at that moment, because you're the one dictating what you should do, that's when you're autonomous and therefore free. Does that make sense? You don't have something outside of you dictating to you what to do. That's slavery for Kant. And this bait right now is dictating to you what to do. You were fine until you saw this bait. Does that make sense? Okay, good. So
I was going to say that.
Okay. Avila.
But in that case, if you were fine, you wouldn't look for someone else or fall for someone else.
Obviously, yeah, if you're happy, you don't have any, it's easier to resist, right? Because your instinct and your reason are working for you. But sometimes you're not happy and your instinct wants to wander away, but your reason is like, no, we're staying here. At that moment, you're miserable, but you're free. That's the idea.
So being reasonable would have you stay in a situation that you're unhappy, unwanted, and maybe the situation that you're in would cause problems.
Yes.
So
yes.
It doesn't matter what one wants. It doesn't matter our mentality, emotion.
You're tasting the price of morality, right? You're really you're calculating now the cost, right? Because you are miserable, but you in a way are faithful to your highest principles. You see, so I would add to Kant, just to make him palatable, there is a kind of joy in being faithful to yourself, which is not equated with happiness. Does that make sense? I'm adding this. It's not giving any joy. There's no joy in Kant, right? But I would say, personally, from having tried out his philosophy, I get a sense of joy from being faithful to myself, even if I am miserable in a way or unhappy. I still have this joy that, okay, I'm doing what my higher self has prescribed, right? So in that sense, I wouldn't say you're completely miserable, because you have this inner peace or this inner joy or this inner kind of groundedness coming from the fact that you're faithful to yourself. Does that make sense?
But how would you be able to feel that if you're not happy?
So so happy versus joy, right? Happiness versus joy. Happiness is based on the outside. Joy is within. You know the difference, certainly. Have you heard this difference, that joy comes from within? It's coming from inside, and happiness is coming from outside, right? So joy is autonomous, happiness is heteronomous. So I would add to Kant, just to help you guys, right? To help convince you that there is something there, that you can still feel a deep sense of joy, even though your circumstances are wretched, right? Does that help a little bit?
But how would you know that your higher power is the right decision?
That is, of course, the notion of dignity. Remember, we did the second categorical imperative, that whatever does not destroy the dignity of your partner is what you want to uphold, right? So you're respecting your partner. Now, if your partner wants to leave, right? Or right, if your partner in a way is destroying your dignity, this is different, right? Because the only duty we have for Kant is to protect the dignity of the partner and my dignity. If my partner is destroying my dignity day after day and I'm in danger of losing my dignity, for Kant, you're justified to leave, to protect your dignity. But if you're good, partner is nice, sweet to you, and it's just a little boring, you know, and there's exciting soulmate over here. That's not a good enough incentive, right? So Kant is not saying you always stay in a marriage. He's saying when the marriage is going against your dignity, making you into an object, or you know, degrading you into the level of an object, no matter how the partner, then yeah, you have to protect your dignity. You can leave. But if there's no, and you know, your dignity is fine, and you choose to leave, you're destroying their dignity, because now they're just an object you use and discard whenever you want to. So that's the criteria, right? It's good you're helping us review this. So that's the criteria, and that criteria I think is very convincing, right? Is the criteria of respect. That's the only criteria you follow. That's what dictates any decision you make on the moral plane. Does that make sense? I saw a few hands, but yes, go ahead.
I think the part that I kept getting stuck on, we actually just, you guys just touched upon it, is that the Western, I guess, concept of morality is very often tethered to some form of utilitarianism, some form of what would make the most people happy, or what would be the best for most people to work out. And Kant is working with a completely different, like not even anywhere near that.
Yeah.
So
it's the distinction between, which I didn't mention because I hate utilitarianism, is the distinction between utilitarian ethics, which for me are not ethics, they're pure instinct. I'm a Kantian, so you know, so I can't deal with that. And then the deontological, which is the technical term for what Kant is doing, which is distinguished from any type of utility. It's deontological, it's separate from the world. Right, in a way. So yeah, that's definitely, we are a totally different dimension with Kant, right, than the classical utilitarian ethics, right? Yes, and assume.
Like if another situation where they're like already married and like it's going well, and you know, some soulmate, like a person who's perfect for them more than another has been before, like comes along, I feel like they only stay in marriage to be and faithful to their spouse when they feel good. Not like when they want to be faithful to themselves, they probably want to be faithful to their spouse. And
oh yeah, you can stay in that marriage out of instinctual reasons, right? Like, oh, I don't want to hurt my kids, I don't want to hurt my spouse. Hurting is not a problem for Kant, right? It's the dignity, right? So if you're saying, you know, we have a mortgage together, or you know, it's too complicated to leave, you know, and so you can totally make the same decision as a moral person, but out of instinctual reason. We saw that with the example of the bar, right? Some of you go up, some of you don't, and the reasons were very different. Some of you were moral reasons, some of you were instinctual reasons. So totally, you can make the so-called right decision, but out of pure instinct. So you're not moral at that moment at all, right?
Well, would you consider like hitting somebody, or like, you know, kind of looking down on the women, would that be like considered violating their dignity?
It's hard to.
Would you consider it violating their dignity if you're like hitting them and that's the only reason you're spending the time with them?
Yeah, it's a form of respect, right? You spend time with them because, yeah, you don't love them, but out of respect for them, you stay. That would be what Kant would say. That of course they have to decide what they want to do, right, and what is respect for them. But that for Kant is so important. Like, you can run out of love, but we should never run out of respect, right? Or of protecting the dignity of that person. And I mean, sometimes a couple will say, it won't hurt my dignity, I want you to leave. Let's leave, right? Each other, we are unhappy. So couples can say that, like, let's both leave, we both want this to end, and they'll decide together to leave. And it's a decision happening on the instinctual level, and nobody's dignity is degraded. And so the morality does not even enter. So a lot of divorces is mutual. So there's no loss of dignity. So Kant is like, if it's mutual, there is not really, although he might argue, well, you're both treating each other as objects to be whatever, right? But so he might have a problem with that. But certainly the spectrum of divorce, there's moral divorce and there's immoral divorce, right? And it depends, right? What is why you decide to leave? Is it because you're just bored, or is it whatever, you don't know why you're there? Or is there really a dignity issue where you're losing your dignity or they're losing their dignity, right? Yeah.
What about the dignity of the soulmate? What if they're not just your soulmate, you're also their soulmate? Aren't you like doing the service to kind of feel mutual feelings and that you never give it a chance?
You're hurting their happiness, but you're not hurting their dignity by not going with them. Do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. So yeah, you're hurting their happiness for sure. And Kant doesn't give a damn about our happiness, in case you didn't notice, right? So for him, the only real thing that should be upheld is the dignity, right? Ramos? No, okay. Any other questions to clarify? Okay, good. This is very good. All right. I think we can. I want to talk about your writings. So I want to stop with Kant for now. So hopefully you're a little more clear on Kant, a little more reconciled, maybe Goldstein. Some of you hated Kant from the beginning, so hopefully it's a little better. Let me talk to you a little bit about the writing. So this is what we're gonna do. Every time we have this group work, right? So I just want to remind you, I think Mackenzie and Safi, you weren't there when I said this, but the syllabus has been changed. So where it said no class, it now says group work. Okay, so we do have class on Wednesday, basically. In these classes of group work, what I'm gonna have you do, and it'll be nicer when it gets nicer outside, because you'll be able to do this outside. You'll get in the same groups, and I'm gonna give you about 5 or 6 questions which will tie Kant to any current issues we're dealing with, right? So you'll see I'll give you the 5 questions. For example, for this time, I will ask a question that you will like: are animals worthy of respect, right? Here's another one. What would Kant say with regards to the Rittenhouse case, right? What would Kant advise Bonhoeffer, who joined the resistance, if you recall? I'll tell you a little more about Bonhoeffer in a bit, about joining the resistance. Would Kant be a Blue Lives Matter or a Black Lives Matter person, right? What's Kant's take on abortion? What's his take on gay marriage? You see, these are issues that we are debating, and debating really badly, right? We're debating, and there is like, oh my God, the arguments that are being thrown in the public space, right, are really, really bad. So I want us to look at this as philosophers and really, and as Kantians in this case, right? We will look at some of these questions as Kantians. So in your group, you will be kind of really digging together Kant's philosophy and figuring out how would Kant really respond to this. It's a good exercise of beginning to think through the political debates we are having, but philosophically and specifically, this time in a Kantian way, right? So that's what you'll be kind of talking about for the whole hour together in a kind of relaxed manner. And one of these questions you will pick, and you will do the test based on it. So you pick one, any one of it, right? I don't care. So, but I want you to talk about all of them because they're interesting. And you can also clarify some ideas that you have about the topic you want to cover with the others, right? You can go back and forth, bounce your ideas off of each other, right? So it should be interesting. So I'll put those questions on Blackboard when we're done, and you can already begin thinking about them and picking one maybe for yourself, or maybe waiting till you have the group discussion. And then that question will be due this Saturday, right? So, but you'll have this group work where you can really kind of brainstorm over different ways of addressing these questions, and you can even present what you're going to say and see what people respond, whatever, right? So it's a really good exercise. So when you start to write, here's what, so make sure you write this down. I'm going to put it on Blackboard also, so you can start taking notes. There's 3 sections I want that paper to have. The paper is 1.5 pages, single-spaced. So it should be at least 1.5 pages single-spaced, right? And there's 3 sections. So first paragraph, this is your introduction. Introduction should have 2 things. It should have the problem you're about to address. So usually this problem is based on the questions. For example, are animals worthy of respect? Well, tell me a little bit, the debate, right? There's a debate right now about whether animals are worthy of respect. Animal rights activists are saying they are worthy of respect. We shouldn't eat them. We shouldn't enslave them. We shouldn't, torture them like we do. And then people are saying they're just animals. Why should we, right? So you situate the question, right? Situate the problem. So in the introduction, you situate the problem. So you should have an awareness of the debate, right? If you do the abortion, you should be like, okay, here's the debate. The debate is not whether killing is right or wrong. The debate is whether a fetus is a human being, right? That's the debate. It's not whether killing or not killing, right? Everybody agrees we shouldn't kill human beings, but is the fetus a human being? Or Kant would say a rational being. That's what you need to look at, right? So you need to situate the debate, right? Tell me a little bit, what's the problem and what are people arguing back and forth briefly, right? And then you say, and then you announce what you're gonna do. And it's very simple. You just say in this paper, right, this is standard cliche, and you can say in this paper, I'm going to explore what Kant would say about this topic, period, right? And then you can, and then you say, you know, maybe you can give me a sense of where you're going. First, I'm gonna look at this, second, I'm gonna look at that, whatever. But in the introduction, you never tell me your conclusion. Do not anticipate and give me the whole thing. Tell me I'm gonna explore, I'm gonna look at, and we'll see what Kant has to say. Leave me in suspense, right? Don't tell me the conclusions in the introduction. Is that clear for the introduction? Okay. Then you begin to write, right? And here are the points I want you to think about as you're writing so you can write decently. Number one, you need supportive quotes, right? Whatever you say about Kant needs support, right? You can't just say Kant says and not give the reference, right? So you need the reference, but it's not enough to give the reference. Two things. This reference needs to be connected to what you're arguing. I swear by God, I have to say this is so horrible, but I do. Because some people, they just throw quotes. They say something and then throw a random quote and then you guys do this. And then they continue. So you got to pick a quote which fits with what you're saying. And you got to explain the quote. Explain the quote. Don't just pick a quote and leave me with all these heavy concepts and don't explain what the quote is saying. So as you're making your argument, Kant would think this about abortion because he believes this about whatever, respect. And so here's a quote, and then this is what he means by this and by that, and blah, blah, blah. So you explain the quote. You pick a quote which is adequate, relevant to what you're saying, and you explain the quote clearly. Second thing to think about, this is something you guys do a lot, you repeat yourself. So you'll say one point, go to another point, and then go back to the point you just said and add a few more things. So it's not coherent when you do that, right? You need to really say one point, the next point, and finish, right? So some of you will write, you'll say one thing, so you're not really thinking of your structure when you write like that. You need to be aware, I'm gonna say this, then I'm gonna say that, and then I'm gonna conclude. But since you're just writing kind of off the, you just write, you say, oh yeah, there's this idea, oh yeah, and then there's this idea, oh yeah, and then there's this too, kind of, and it sounds exactly like what you just said. Don't do that, okay? Don't repeat yourself. Third thing to think about, do not get off topic. Some of you will forget that you're talking about abortion and start telling me about, I don't know, voting rights of the Supreme Court or whatever. Don't do that. Stick to, I swear you guys do that. This is all real life experience, right? Stick to the topic. Don't go off into something else, which is a different topic, right? Then please, fourth point, proofread. I don't want spelling, syntactical mistakes. Proofread with whatever, you spell check, make an effort. And then finally, it's 1.5 pages, single space. So that's as you're writing, you think about writing in this way, right? Finally, your conclusion. It's a summary of everything you found. It's you basically tell me, well, with regards to abortion, this is what Kant would say, and you summarize, and then you have some final thoughts, and that's it, right? So that would that's pretty good. If you follow this, you can aim for B or A, but you're not going to flunk. I mean, of course, unless you start to make a point about Kant, which shows me that you don't understand Kant. So you have to actually, whatever you say about Kant does have to be accurate, right? Otherwise, you can lose points for that. But for the writing, that's the part, right? That will help you a lot. Okay. Any questions? Good. All right. So
font or font size preference?
12. Now, I'm warning you in this class, so hopefully it won't happen again, but in this class, it is well known that the first paper is a catastrophe. So just be prepared. Do your best, but hopefully I gave you enough guidelines for it to not be a catastrophe, but be aware that I will be grading pretty strict. So you want to really, and I will be making annotations in your paper actually. For this particular class. I'm really trying to get you to learn to write in a way that's decent, so they should be good. So you just know that you will progress. You're not going to stay at whatever grade you get the first test, you're going to progress, so don't get discouraged. But it's been one of the classes that some people have cried in this class, okay, just so you know. I had a student weep over the frustration of not being able to, but also I didn't have good guidelines at the time. So hopefully now with these guidelines, you should be better, right? Did I scare you enough? Are you freaking out? That's good. Okay, yes.
So we're writing what we think it's photo, for example, according to Kant, right?
Yes.
Not what he's just saying, but what we think that what we get from his.
Yeah, so for sure, you're basically embodying Kant and acting like a Kantian scholar and say, this is how Kant would see the situation.
Right, but not how I see it personally.
No, not, we don't care about you.
Right.
What you think is irrelevant, completely, right? Yes. Yes, you're putting it in the test. Yeah, by Saturday night. Okay.
You're
Yes.
saying what we think is irrelevant, but the other topic, let's say you said abortion, what if we have to put our output on that?
No, just Kant. What would Kant say about that, based on what you've learned?
Okay.
How would Kant see it? How would he analyze the situation?
So you're grading like our understanding of what we.
Yeah, I just want to hear Kant, you know. I want to hear you. Just Kant. Basically, yeah, this is a way for me to see two things. You're writing coherently, and number two, you know Kant really well, right? That's really the purpose, right? Good. Anything else? You're staying, right? Just so we can talk about your assignments. Good. Anything else? All good? All right. I will see you Wednesday for the discussion. I'll put everything on Blackboard right after.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, I guess so. Oh, yeah, and then you have to go to my.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go take it.